Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tank12, if you call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks, where we're today reviewing the AMX 12T. Yeah, very awkward. I already made this video. Turns out I muted myself. Also turns out, when I finished reviewing the tank and its characteristics, I wanted to go to the gameplay to show you guys a really nice game I had on D-Day, or Normandy. And it turns out that the 5 or 10 minutes I actually started World of Tanks again, they installed a micro patch. This micro patch completely screwed over all of the older replay files and I cannot play it anymore. It was the perfect mixture between stealthy and active scouting. Passive and active scouting in one video. It hurts. It hurts me deeply. But either way, we're gonna redo it. I'll have to start playing a few more games. And hopefully the video still ends up decent and you get a little bit of idea what the AMX 12T is all about. Now, keep in mind, once again, crew is not completely full level. It's not what you would be running ideally. But at the same time, the most important things are here. I have a commander with 6 Sense. I'm running camouflage as a skill, so I still have all of the benefits. I just lose Brothers in Arms, so I'm not going to get a big benefit in terms of gunpowder, firepower, and in mobility. At least in traverse speed, I'll have a little bit of a deficit if I'm not 100%. But I am using premium consumable, which is strong coffee, which will give me quite a big boost with 10% improved skills and perks in the game. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. So the AMX 12T is a tank that is completely different from the AMX ELC Biz. Now, lastly, we reviewed this tank, and this is a vehicle that is known for its stealthy approach, for its 90mm gun, and for being absolutely useless when you have to turn the turret in any direction, because 15 degrees to the left, 15 degrees to the right. You don't have that problem here anymore. It's way larger. It's more of a typical kind of French light tank. It has an autoloader, which is a new novel feature. You still have decent concealment. You still have the same view range, which is kind of interesting, 360 as on the ELC. But you have this autoloading system now, and you also have a fully traversable turret in any direction, 360 degrees. What a luxurious way to start into the French light tank line. I have some mosquitoes right here that are just annoying the living shit out of me, but I'm just gonna ignore them for time being. So, let's take a look at the researchable parts. There are not a lot of them, but still it's quite important. I have not used the stock 75mm gun in a very long time, but immediately, as soon as you can, switch to the improved gun, the SA50, because it is basically better in every kind of sense. It's only 5,800 experience, and the next thing I would do, I would probably first get the gun, then the tracks, then the engine. Now, if you cannot get the gun without getting the tracks first, just reverse it. Go for the tracks, then go for the gun, and then go for the engine. Now, the engine gives you 80 horsepower more than you would have with the AMX B271 engine. You get 80 horsepower more. That's quite an improvement, yes? But at the same time, this tank doesn't weigh a lot, so, you know, it should still be okay in a stock configuration. Let's take a look at the firepower. What kind of shell do you have? What kind of a gun is it? So basically, you have 3 shell types as always, or most of the case. AP, APCR, and high explosive. Now, I think we can ignore the high explosive shell for the time being. It does have great shell velocity of 1,000 meters per second, but only 38 millimeters of penetration. Now, at tier 6, how often will you find a target that only has 38 millimeter of armor and kind of appears somewhere where you can shoot it while you're scouting? That's quite difficult, and these scenarios are quite rare, so I would get at least one clip of high explosive, but I wouldn't get more than that. Now let's talk about the AP shell. 135 average damage, 144 penetration, which is decent at tier 6 in my opinion, and a very good shell velocity of 1000 meters per second. The APCR shell, on the other hand, has an incredible potential of 202 millimeters of penetration, 1250 meters per second shell velocity, and, well, the same damage. So yeah, APCR shells on this thing are quite great at tier 6 and tier 7. They are very reliable and they will get the job done. Rate of fire, as you can see right here, is 9 rounds per minute. It has quite a long reload time of at least 19 seconds without 100% crew. And the intra-clip reload of 2.5 seconds is also quite long, if you ask me. You have 4 shots. I don't want to answer a survey right now. Oh my god, World of Tanks, please. Just let me do this review for once. And, yeah. 4 shells, in the end, that's going to be 7.5 seconds that you have to wait until you're fully, well, spent and you've fired every single shot. Obviously, first shot, you don't have to have any intra-clip reload because it's the first shot. And yeah, you have 7.5 seconds. That's quite a long time, especially if you're in front of a tank that has a very high DPM. At tier 6, that's a lot of vehicles. So be careful when you're unloading on something, at tier 6 especially. You might not be able to do more damage than they will do to you in those 7.5 seconds. Gun traverse speed is fairly nice, 48.45 degrees per second. I don't think you can complain too much about it. 6 degrees of gun elevation, but the most annoying part about this tank is certainly the gun elevation. The gun depression, 6 degrees of gun depression is decent. The issue is just that the ELC biz was a lot smaller, and 5 degrees of gun depression here was actually doable, but it also felt like it lacked gun depression. But with the AMX 12T now, you are kind of lacking the height. So like you have to double the height of the ELC biz, so you actually have 6 degrees, but it feels like you have 5 degrees. So I hope that makes sense, because the tank is a bit taller than the ELC biz. 12 degrees of gun elevation, on the other hand, is quite atrocious. You can barely lift up your gun anywhere up here, and it's quite tragic. I would like to see what the Panhard EBR has. 15 degrees, and the 1375 has 9 degrees of gun elevation. Oh god, it's terrible. You can't hit anything that is above you. It's impossible. So, the aim time, 2.09 seconds, which is decent. The dispersion will go down to 0.34, 0.33 if I have Brothers in Arms and everything in it. And the DPM is okay, but it's not the highest since you are an autoloader. This gun is fairly reliable and it's a lot of fun to use, but at the same time, I think if you are a passive scout and you have to utilize your gun, you will have a little bit of a hard time being a successful passive scout. But the funny thing is, you know, the beauty of the French light tanks is that they give you the option of being a passive scout, and at the same time, if you have to defend yourself, if you want to be offensive, you always have that option by having that autoloader on top of your vehicle. Mobility-wise, this tank is fairly great, 62 kph, 26 in reverse, 43.58 track traverse, which is actually quite bad in terms of, well, you have to see how many different parameters I have put in it to modify it and to improve upon. 43.58, and the very annoying thing with the French light tanks is they don't turn very well on the spot. They don't turn very well with high speeds. And the issue is, it's just like the Bourrasque, they kind of lock up, and you actually have to adapt to it. Engine power is 320, 26 horsepower per ton. That's fine enough. You'll get up to speeds in, you know, enough time. You don't have to be worried too much about that. Concealment wise, 34.5% on the move and also stationary. That is one of the things you'll have to get used to, because the ELC biz is fairly nice with 41.9%, and also, you know, I don't even have all of the same things I have on the 12T, so it is quite larger, and it does make sense that it is easier to spot. Spotting wise, which is quite weird in my opinion, this tank has 360 meters view range, base view range, and it's the same as the ELC Biz. So that tier 5 tank has the same view range, and you don't get any improvements upon that, but you get a 75mm autoloading cannon that the AMX ELC Biz does not possess. So, having talked about that, what kind of equipment would I use on this vehicle? Now, I am going to be using the coated optics because it is for the scouting slot. You could also go for the low noise exhaust system, which would give you better concealment. Now, since you have the option for two setups, you could always go for... Wait, do you have the option for 2 setups at tier 6? You should have the option for 2 setups, right? No, wait, yeah, you have. You have 2 options for the setup at tier 6. And if you are interested in going fully as a scout, you don't want to have anything for the gun, I would go for low noise exhaust system as well. Put that in right next to it, and then I would maybe even go for additional grousers or improved rotation mechanism to improve your mobility if you have to go somewhere. I think your top speed is not the issue. I don't think your acceleration is the issue. I think that your mobility while turning is a bit of a problem. If you go with the additional grousers, you'll have better hull traverse and maintaining top speed when moving across terrain types. So that could be an option, or improved rotation mechanism, which will give you better hull traverse speed and also lower the dispersion. Now, if you want to be more of a flexible light tank that also can fight if it needs to fight, right here, this is a setup I've been using, which I've been quite happy with. Vertical stabilizer, because the dispersion values are quite bad, especially if your crew is not trained 100%, and then also improved ventilations to give you that additional 6% on top of the skills. I think I'm quite happy with this. I do see far enough, I can shoot targets if I need to, and I've been able to kind of deal with tanks even when I was, with a crew that is not even at 100%. But yeah, the AMX 12T, very fun tank. I'd say we go over to the gameplay right now, but the one issue that the AMX 12T has, as I mentioned, the gun elevation is quite a bit problematic. The 1375 exists. This thing is fucking awesome. I love this tank. I love the 1375. I love the 1357. Both of them are exceptional vehicles, and I think the 12T just cannot get on the same level as these tanks do get. So sadly, 12T is not my favorite French light tank, but you can barely do anything against the AMX 13 series. They're really, really great. There's a reason why France has been able to sell these things, because they're just very good and they're quite enjoyable. But we'll focus on that in a different video. Right now, we're going to go to the gameplay. Okay, so I've decided to pick one gameplay, Province, also known as Campania. This is a map in Italy with a very, very nice background. There's like a huge dam in the back, which has kind of been breached or is about to be breached. This is a map you don't see at tier 7, and well, anything above tier 6 you won't see this map, because this map has thankfully only been restricted to vehicles up to tier 6, because anything else, this map is too small. And yeah, it's certainly a good decision by Wargaming. So the AMX 12T in this kind of scenario, I kind of made the wrong move at first, but I wanted to play it a bit slower. And one of the things you notice on this map is that usually you will fight on both sides of the hills, so either on the other side or this side, depending on where you spawn. And a lot of times I usually like to rush over to the other side, take an aggressive position at C2, but that does put you in harm's way. So because I've had some very unfortunate games in my AMX 12T where I died very early on, I decided to take things a bit slower and first take a little bit of a look at what is coming up the J line up to our hill. But as you can see, turns out I don't feel secure there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be constantly spotted by these guys. and I would get shot from the other side as well. But I did pick a place where you have some buildings in front of you, but there are some holes in there. So the very beginning of this gameplay, you'll see quite a few things that sometimes you have to have a little bit of patience in the 12T. Sometimes rushing ahead, taking aggressive positions where you can actually spot very actively, well, that's the right call, but sometimes it's not, especially on such a small map like Campania or Province. You will be caught off guard and they will all fire at you, because this map is quite interesting, because a lot of times you will be shot from several directions. So if I move on over to, let's say, C2 or C3, I will get shot at from the tanks that have managed to maneuver themselves into or onto our hill, and at the same time we're going to get shot at from the 1 and 2 line. So you have to be a bit careful when you're playing this map, and you'll have to have a little bit of, let's say, patience. That's probably a very good thing to have, not just in the game but in real life as well. To have a little bit of patience will make things a lot more bearable in this very weird and crazy world. Especially when you're a light tank driver, it's going to give you much better results. But sometimes you have to take some risks. So we're moving over to the other side. I want to see if I can actually have a little bit of a crossfire on the M6 on the other side, and maybe even spot the AMX 12T that has been spotted at E7. This is a very little sneaky AMX 12T who is trying to make a move by proxy spotting our tanks on the ridgeline. You can do that if you get into the 50 meter radius, but obviously you're going to get spotted as well. So if I move over here, I can be a very effective counter against the 12T. So what you can see right here is the very nice 75mm gun with the autoloader, which makes this tank such a novel vehicle to play. It's not 100% accurate, but you know, I think it still works perfectly fine. You also have 1,000 meters per second shell velocity, which is really, really good to have, especially in our tier 6 light tank. And you can see we haven't been spotted. We're still waiting for the 12T to make a mistake, fall back, so that we are kind of free from his view range over there, but we do bounce his side, which rarely happens. You rarely bounce the 12T. This thing does not have any armor. When it gets lit up, it goes up like a bloody Christmas tree that is on fire. So yeah, the 75mm gun that we have right here, the SA-50, is actually the same gun that you have on the AMX 1375. Now the AMX 1375 only has that as a top gun, so you actually have to get used to this concept. Now at tier 6, this gun is incredibly good. And you can see right there we have a VK3002M. This gun is very, very good. 144mm of penetration, 202mm of penetration with APCR shells, and that does really suffice. But when you go to tier 7 on the AMX 1375, you do notice the lack of penetration that you have with the 75mm gun, especially the SA-50. Just one thing you have to notice, but still doesn't mean it's a bad tank. I think the 13 line is certainly a better tech tree line. It's a better platform, but it would have been great to see a different gun. But that's what you have the 1390 for, right? To have a 90mm gun. So one thing you can see is that concealment on this tank, you know, if you can stay inside of a bush, you're going to be quite effectively concealed. We just used that to spot the VK because he was getting too close to us, and I didn't want to get into a firefight with the VK, so I just waited for all of the support on the other side. That's the beauty of this map. When you have the snipers lined up on the other side, usually it doesn't take very long to take out any targets that are close by. And one shot that we had to take was to finish off the VK, because I just wanted to get him out of the way, and he was getting behind the rock where he was not touchable. So one of the things I want to point out, as I think you have to point out with the French light tanks, is that they have the autoloader, which is great and will give you a lot of firepower in comparison to other light tanks at the same tier, even at the, you know, the AMX 1375, the 1390, the 13105. But one of the major downsides to all of these tanks is that they don't have any gun elevation, and their gun depression is, well, it's okay at best. This tank, I think, has 12 or 13 degrees of gun elevation, and you'll notice that in just a second when we actually have some shots on the T-3485 on the other side. Now, the T-3485 on the other side did climb the mountain, and because we have the view range, we are going to be spotting him in a second. Right here, with any other tank, you could be shooting at him, but with French light tanks, you see we are doing, well, these weird dance, trying to see if we can actually elevate the gun. But we do run into the KV2, and we also get a little bit of assistance right there. This is the main thing that you want to be focusing on. I think this tank is incredibly flexible in the ways that you can play it as a damage dealing vehicle. You can play it as a light medium tank with the 75mm gun, which is definitely very capable of dealing damage and allowing you to defend yourself. But at the same time, you can be a very good passive scout, as we have been able to spot a lot of tanks, and we've been able to stay hidden. And having that flexibility is probably one of the main reasons why the French light tank line is such a, well, vibrant and well-liked line, even though they do suffer from several issues. For example, lack of penetration. You'll see that in the tier 7, the AMX 1375. Lack of protection, but that's one of the key aspects that you give up for the mobility. Obviously, bad gun elevation, gun depression angles, but a very, very powerful 75mm gun on most of the tanks. And decent mobility, or very good mobility, coupled with a very nice gun. Very big misplay by my point right there. We actually drive forward, get knocked out by the KV2 with a single shot. He ammo wrecks us, and he blows my turret like 30 meters away from the tank, which looked really amazing, by the way. And I found that really funny, but my team should be winning this without an issue. So let's talk about final verdict on the AMX 12T. I think this is a very novel tank because this is the first French light tank after the ELC Biz that comes in, or the first French light tank from the entire line that comes in with an autoloader. Anything below the tier, well, anything below tier 6 does not possess an autoloader, if I recall correctly. And the AMX 12T feels quite novel because now you have this really, really powerful asset, these 4 rounds in your magazine, which allows you to basically do a lot of damage in very short time. Now, obviously, in between the shots, you have like 2.5 seconds. You'll have to reload the shell. You're quite vulnerable, and if you're going up against, let's say, a T50-2 with its very high DPM but very low alpha damage, it's still going to be doing a number on you. Don't get me wrong, because it'll take you 7.5 seconds to get like 4 shots out, and you have to reload 3 of them because the first one is already loaded. So in these 7.5 seconds, the T50-2 can do a lot of damage. But, you know, the very interesting thing is, if you keep that in mind and you play with a little bit of cover, and you play a little bit of, you know, going around the side of the cover, like when we're backing out, backing in, all that kind of stuff. Oh, I didn't actually see that the M44 almost committed suicide right there and gets knocked out by the FE. I didn't know that because I actually was cleaning some things during that time while I stayed in the battle. So it's quite interesting to see that. So yeah, when you are hidden, you can really utilize that autoloader to the fullest. And that's a really nice thing if you're a light tank in the game, because it will give you a lot more free room to, you know, use your resources and actually be an active participant in the game. Because, you know, having low alpha, having low DPM, all of these things are not a lot of fun when you're a light tank. They're not a lot of fun if you're a medium tank, but when you're a light tank where you don't have any protection at all, it's really, really difficult. When you have an autoloader, all of a sudden, you actually have a little bit of an advantage in that situation. So yeah, the 12T, it's fast, it doesn't have any armor, it lacks the gun elevation, It doesn't have the best penetration in terms of, well, with the AP. Well, I think the AP shell penetration is okay. But you have very good shell velocity. You have an autoloader, which is great. You're a great little scout. You have great view range. I don't recall exactly the number. I think it's 360 meters base view range. You can up that quite a bit. You have decent concealment values. Overall, a very cool tank in the line, and it opens the door for the 13 line, the 13 platform, because the 13 platform is actually going to be a lot more demanding. It's actually a lot harder to play, I think, but also very rewarding because the 13 line is incredible in all of the things it delivers. Now, the 1375 will be a bit of a test of your endurance because you only have the same exact gun, but you're a tier higher. But obviously, that's a thing for the future. Right now, we're dealing with the 12T, and I think the 12T, if we had to give it a rating out of 10, I would definitely be giving this one 8 out of 10 because it's a very fun tank, a tank that you can have a lot of fun on. But the 2 points I would take away are pretty obvious. A lack of gun elevation, no gun depression, very difficult to use that when somebody is above you or below you. That's point 1. And the second point is that 144 millimeters of penetration at tier 6 is decent, but the farther you go up against tier 7 and 8s, you'll notice that you're lacking pen and you're also lacking the ammunition. The further you go in the line, you actually lose a lot more ammo, and ammo becomes quite scarce, so that you have to use more premium shells. So that's one of the things. If you want to be combat effective at tier 7 and 8, you'll have to use premium shells. But I think you can still get past that if you play it more as a scout than a light tank and a medium tank. Obviously, pros are just that this tank is really flexible, and that the entire French line actually is quite flexible. You can play it as a stealthy assassin, and it's a lot of fun as that. So I hope you guys did enjoy this review. As always, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Until then, have a good one, and enjoy your